Hi guys, you have to love the right-wing meltdown over a protest at one of Rishi Sunak's many houses by Greenpeace. So the organisation took direct action after the Prime Minister said that he would issue hundreds of new licences for extraction of oil and gas in the North Sea. It's also interesting that BP signed a deal worth $1.5 billion with Infosys, which is owned by Rishi Sunak's father-in-law. So the issuing of licences has nothing to do with Rishi Sunak's personal wealth. Okay, you got that? Anyway, back to the meltdown. GB News half-wit Michelle Dewberry struggled to understand the right of people to protest when it was explained to her by Michael Walker from Novara Media, who was invited on to discuss the Greenpeace action.
I can see why it's controversial. I mean, I think it would be out of order if there were two conditions which were met. So one, if there were people there. So obviously you don't want to scare someone's kids, however much you disagree with their policies. And two, if that house, the address of it wasn't already public knowledge. Now, everyone already knows what Rishi Sunak's house looks like because there was the controversy over his £250,000 swimming pool. And I think it's not a coincidence that these protests always skirt on the bounds of acceptability. The reason they do these actions whereby some people will disagree and some people will agree with the motives or the means, the tactics, is that means on shows like this, we have a debate about it. And then on shows like this, we also get to talk about the outrage.
And this is the point. Because if you look at protests in the past, it was maybe a few people marching down a street, holding banners and playing some music or blowing whistles. That was a protest. But in the social media age, you need to grab people's attention. And you need to do something that achieves that. And this achieves that. People are talking about it. If Greenpeace had marched down the street complaining about issuing oil and gas licenses, which is running in the opposite direction of net zero, it wouldn't grab people's attention. This grabs people's attention. That's what you have to do.
Do you think it's all right that they've gone to his house and done this?
I think because they knew he was away, it's okay. And because we already knew Rishi Sunak's address. As I say, I think if there were any risk that there would be kids in the house, it would be unacceptable. I think if there was any risk that would be doxing them, so revealing his address, that would be unacceptable. But neither of those conditions are met.
Yeah, but hang on a second, because, yeah, it's public knowledge that Rishi and his family are in California or wherever it is on their holiday. But these people, they don't know. Family members, Rishi could have said to his, I don't know, whoever it is, guess what, the house is going to be empty the next week. Why don't you guys go and stay there, chill out, enjoy the grounds, the gardens? They don't know whether or not anyone is in that property. So that excuse doesn't wash with me.
God. Grasping at straws. It's like, oh, you don't know who could have been in the house. Somebody, some children could have turned up and, oh my God, it's pathetic. Look, Greenpeace turned up the house. They rang the doorbell. They spoke to the staff there. The staff. Rishi Sunak has staff in his house, even though he's on holiday. He's really struggling during this cost of living crisis. He has probably a chef and a cleaner and other people in his house while he's on holiday. Think about that for a moment. He didn't even send them home. But the staff were there. Greenpeace turned up, said, we'd like to have a protest. And the staff basically said, okay. Because they didn't immediately call the police. Or if they did call the police arrived to maintain the peace. They didn't come to stop the protest. But I'm not sure if the police did actually turn up. But I haven't seen anything to substantiate that. But if the police were called, they would maintain the peace, not stop the protest. But the staff didn't seem to do that. But also because Rishi Sunak was not there. So Rishi Sunak's head of staff probably decided, look, there's no point calling the police. There's no point making a big issue out of this. Just let them do their protest and then move on. They'll be here for a few hours and then they'll go away. Rishi Sunak is in California at the moment. He's not even going to see it.
And even if there was not anybody in that house, I just think, who on God's green earth do you think that you are, that you can go to somebody's home, private home, just because you disagree actually with their professional policies?
Is it his private home? How many private homes does Rishi Sunak have? And he can't be in all of them at the same time. Now, this is different to, for example, somebody protesting outside her house, for example. You don't have any power. Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak has issued these policies. Now, how are people supposed to protest? And unfortunately, this question was never raised during this debate, this discussion. I would love for the right wing to explain to us how people are supposed to protest. Because when I try to engage with them online, they ignore the question. They'll complain about the types of protests that are taking place. People should not be blocking the road. People should not be walking slowly in the road. People should not be spraying orange paint on buildings. People should not be, protesting outside Rishi Sunak's house. They explain how people should not protest, but they never explain how people should protest. But when it's a protest that they agree with, for example, the anti-ULEZ, they're happy with that. Doesn't matter if they're blocking the road. Doesn't matter if people are blocking the road when it comes to protesting about fuel prices. Those protests are okay. So blocking the road or disrupting traffic is okay if it's something you agree with. Right. But when it's something you don't agree with, can you give us an example of how people should protest? Is it, well, you should just stay in your home and, do nothing?
That's his job. So in his job, he's done something that you disagree with. So taking that to his house, I think is disgraceful. And I'm struggling to understand why you're kind of saying it's all right because you think no one was in.
Well, they also said, so in the interview you just showed, which I hadn't seen beforehand, the co-director of Greenpeace had said, we knocked on the door, we spoke to the staff. They clearly knew that
so
no
there was
one
people in
was...
then?
Yeah, but they told the staff what was going on. So
then there was people in.
But there's no suggestion that any...
They were staff. They were not living in the house, you friggin' half-wit. They were staff. They were working there. Do you not understand the difference between your workplace and your home? Maybe she lives at GB News, so if somebody was to protest outside GB News, they'd be protesting at her home.
Anyone was scared by that, because also that was their work, the staff, that's their workplace, right? And I think we probably all accept that it's okay to take direct action.
But so now that you know that someone
workplace.
was in, because you said a minute ago, if there was no one in, then it was all right. But now that you know that there was someone in, because you just said you've seen it for the first time there, so now you know that there was someone in, does that change your view?
No, because they're at their workplace.
Michael, you're trying to speak to a brick wall here. I don't think she has the mental capacity to understand that.
All right, but if they're in, so as long as someone, right, so you think it's okay to go to someone's house as long as there's nobody in, but there can be someone in as long as they're working there?
Yeah, I think it's okay to go to someone's workplace when they're working there. That's why we often see people drop banners from the Houses of Parliament.
How many houses does Rishi Sunak have? Like, you can't protest outside number 10 because the security just won't allow that. You can't even get anywhere near it. And if you were to protest, you'd be probably removed pretty quickly. So what is the alternative for people? Parliament is closed at the moment. Rishi Sunak is abroad. So how are people supposed to protest?
Here, I do think it's more controversial to protest at someone's house. But if they're not in and everyone already knows the address, I think it's relatively acceptable.
There's no point. Once again, I understand the going on this show and trying to explain it to these people, but they just don't want to. They either don't want to understand or they're just too thick to understand. And I get back to the main point that I raised at the beginning of this. How are people supposed to protest? You explain how they shouldn't protest, but you never explain how they should. Or maybe it's just a case you don't want people protesting in the first place. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.